Hi everybody, I'm Ryan, and today we're going to talk about flex slots in Jeskai Control in Standard.
What is it? Jeskai Dragon is coming? Oh, and he plans on like controlling us all and putting us out of our misery. I mean, I'm okay with that. Like the current establishment isn't doing very good. Oh yeah, that's a big dragon. Shit.
And let's jump into it with what we're not talking about. This is what we are not talking about. These are the non-flex slots in Jeskai Control. If you play Jeskai Control in Standard, you're pretty much bought in to playing these 49 cards in the main deck and these 3 cards in the sideboard. So the question is, when you pick up this deck, what are the 11 cards are you playing in those slots in the main deck? And what are the 12 cards you playing in those slots in the sideboard? Well, these are your options. You essentially get to choose between these 24 cards, picking 11 cards for the main deck, and these 27 cards, picking 12 of them for the sideboard. Let's go over these so you can make an educated decision. You could play an additional 3 Steps Ahead. 3 Steps Ahead is a 1-mana instant with Spree. So you can pay an additional 2 mana to counter target spell, an additional 3 mana to create a token that's a copy of target artifact creature you control, or pay an additional 2 mana to draw 2 cards and discard a card. At worst, this card lets you draw 2 cards then discard. It's also a cancel, but where this card shines is being able to pay 5 mana and do both of that. Be able to counter a spell and get some card selection is very powerful. The issue is 3 mana for a counter spell is just frankly very expensive, but it's very good if you're able to pull it off. You can play Destroy Evil. Destroy Evil is a 2-mana instant. Choose one. Destroy target creature with toughness 4 or greater. Destroy target enchantment. There's a lot of very powerful enchantments, and it kills creatures that are killing us super quickly. You can play the 4th Get Lost. Get Lost is a 2-mana instant. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens. This is pretty unconditional removal. Unfortunately, it doesn't hit artifacts, but it's instant feed, 2 mana, pretty unconditional removal. The maps do come back to bite you sometimes, though, but that is a risk we are willing to take when the removal is so unconditional. You can play a Parting Gust. Parting Gust is 2 mana instant. Gift a tap fish. Exile target non-token creature. If the gift wasn't promised, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. So this allows you to give your opponent basically a 1/1 when you can kill a creature, like exile a creature, or you can bounce your own creatures, whether they be Bezas to get the triggers again, or Shikos, or Meringue River Regents, or whatever, which is pretty powerful, and you don't have to gift the tap fish when you do that very powerful thing. You can play Change the Equation. Change the Equation is a 2-mana instant. Choose one. Counter target spell with mana value 2 or less, or counter target red or green spell with mana value 6 or less. Most things that you care about, I say most, not all, are either 2 or less or red or green 6 or less. There's a very short list, probably single-digit list of cards we care about that this does not counter, and being 2 mana is pretty powerful. You can play up to 3 Dispelling Exhale. It is a 2-mana instant. As initial cost to cast a spell, you may behold a dragon. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. If a dragon was beheld, counter that spell unless controller pays 4. So we can, of course, behold one of the 6 dragons that we are playing anyway, or one of 5 or 6, depending on what you choose for flex slots. And this is just either a slightly worse mana leak or a slightly better mana leak. The issue with a card like this is, while it's very good in the early and mid game, while your opponents are still tapping out, it's really bad in the late game, which is where we want to be with the deck. So it's tough to play the entire playset. You could play up to 2 Roiling Dragonstorm. Roiling Dragonstorm is a 2-mana enchantment. When this enchantment enters, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. When a dragon you control enters, return this enchantment to its owner's hand. Just a very good loot effect, something for us to do on turn 2, especially if we don't have counter magic to leave up. And whenever we play a Shiko or Meringue River Regent, it allows us to replay Roiling Dragonstorm to draw additional cards and get even farther ahead. You can play up to a Braid. A Braid is a 2-mana instant. Choose one. A Braid deals 3 damage to target creature, destroy target artifact. I'm about to say enchantment for some reason. This is fine removal. The 3 damage is fine for 2 mana, right? Damage-based removal is pretty medium in a white deck that has non-damage-based removal. But the big reason we'd be playing a Braid is so that we can take out Cutter. Being able to... It'd be a removal spell anyway, so we can play it in the main deck, but also destroy target artifact is just so powerful against Cutter. Also pretty good against a Ghost Vacuum. You can play up to No More Lies. No More Lies is a 2-mana instant. Counter target spell unless control pays 3. If the spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it to its owner's graveyard. It is a slightly harder to cast, but effectively slightly better mana leak. Has similar issues as Dispelling Exhale, though the exile can kind of matter. You can play a split up. Split up is a 3-mana sorcery. Choose one, destroy all tap creatures, or destroy all untap creatures. This is really good with a lot of opponents playing into the Flood Maw. Being able to return temporary lockdown to your hand during your end step, and then they can untap and kill you is like a really, really common play pattern. And so playing a card like Split Up, while it doesn't deal with Steel Cutter or things like that, or Storm Chaser's talent directly or whatever, Split Up can often give you more time, is good against the like non-hyper aggressive decks, and then also it very often allows you to destroy all the creatures because the decks that you are playing this against are just attacking you. You can play 2 more Temporary Lockdown in the main deck. Temporary Lockdown is a 3-mana enchantment. When this enchantment enters, exile each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less unless this enchantment leaves, until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. This on its surface, again, is better than Split Up against the aggressive decks. It just exiles just everything. Again, the issue with Temp Lockdown is it can be returned and then they get all their stuff, and there's a way, a playset way that a lot of these decks are playing to return Temporary Lockdown to your hand at instant speed. You can play Rediscover the Way. Rediscover the Way is a 3-mana saga. Its first 2 chapters are look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand and the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. And its 3rd chapter is whenever you cast a non-creature spell this turn, target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. This is mostly just stock up number 5. You get to essentially look at the top 6 and pick 2 rather than look at the top 5 and pick 2. But it's of course over 2 turns. And then sometimes the 3rd chapter is relevant. 99% of the time we don't care about the 3rd chapter. We just want to go in the graveyard so we can bring it back with Chico. But it's just another stock up that allows us to get card advantage. You can play 2 more Beza, the Bounding Spring. Beza is a 4-mana 4/5. When it enters, create a treasure token. If an opponent controls more lands than you, you gain 4 life. If an opponent has more life than you, create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens if an opponent controls more creatures than you, and draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. So this is a great catch-up mechanic in some mid-range matchups, sometimes control matchups, but we're mostly playing it for the aggressive decks. Against the aggressive decks, we almost always get a 4/5 blocker, 2 1/1 blockers, and 4 life, which is exactly what we need to kind of transition into that late mid game where this deck starts to shine. You can play Ride's End. Ride's End's a 5-mana instant that costs 3 less if it targets a tapped permanent. Exile target creature or vehicle. Exile removal is really solid. Very often against the decks that this is good. It costs 2 mana, which is totally fine. You can play an Elspeth Stormslayer. It's a 5-mana planeswalker that starts at 5 loyalty. It says if 1 or more tokens will be created under your control, twice that many of tokens are created instead. It's +1. It's create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, which essentially means you create 2 because it does the effect. It's 0 is put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain flying until your next turn, so it allows you to kind of alpha strike with those tokens. And it's -3 is destroy target creature and opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater. Very good against those mid-sized creatures and mid-game creatures. This is just like another way to buy time and also be in a kill condition. 5-mana sorcery spell though is really tough in a deck like this if it doesn't totally take over the game, and Elspeth doesn't really totally take over the game, but it's very strong. You can play Mirroring River Regent. Mirroring River Regent is a 6-mana 6/7 with flying. When this creature enters, return up to 2 other target non-land permanents to their own hands, and then it has an Omen of Coiling Catch. Draw 3 cards and discard a card. This is very good in the mid game, being able to get that card selection, get that card advantage, and then in the late game it can just be a kill condition, returning things like Rolling Dragonstorm, getting attackers out of the way, getting permanents we care about out of the way, and just being a giant flyer. And then you play a Chandra Hopespeakin. Chandra Hopespeakin is a 6-mana planeswalker that starts at 5 loyalty. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. And it's +2 is add 2 mana of any combination of colors. +1, exile the top 5 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among those exiled cards. And it's -X is deal X damage to each of up to 2 targets. This is a very powerful card that allows us to turn our removals into 2 removal, turn our card advantage into super card advantage, and allows us to like dig. One kind of scary part about this though is if we +1 too many times, we can kind of mill ourselves, and that's something that's really scary for this deck against decks that Chandra happens to be good against. So we have to be really conservative when we use it as direct card advantage. We're mostly playing Chandra for the -X to finally kill our opponent, or the static ability. So you're gonna be selecting 11 of these 24 cards to the main deck.
Oh, hello there. I'm glad you made it this far in the video. It probably means you're enjoying what you're watching. And I just wanted to let you know that I have a TCG Player store that funds a lot of the content that you're seeing, that in part allows me to do this full time. Because as you can see from my view count, I do not make enough money to be able to actually do this. So if these videos have helped you in any way, there's a few ways that you can support me beyond just like donating money, but things that you can get stuff back on. If you have cards you want to sell, then you should email me at justbottingbiz@gmail.com. Put right here. It's also in the description of every one of the videos. We can figure something out. I can make some offers. Having more inventory is super, super helpful, and you get money. And you can support me. The other way you can support me is by buying from my TCG Player store, which is also linked down below and in the link tree and all of that stuff. Link right here. You should totally check that out. I'll send you some cards, maybe write you a little note if I know that you're from the videos. That's it. Please consider it and enjoy the rest of your video.
And then we need 12 of these 27 cards for the sideboard. You can pick from Authority of the Consuls. Authority of the Consuls, 1-mana enchantment. Creatures your opponent control enter tapped. Whenever a creature an opponent controls enters, you gain 1 life. This is for the aggressive decks. This turns off haste because they enter tapped. It allows you to gain life and can help you transition into the stage of the game that this deck is powerful in. You can play 2 Exercise. Exercise is a 2-mana sorcery. Exile target artifact, enchantment, or creature with power 4 or greater. This is basically just like slightly better, slightly worse Destroy Evil. Sorcery speed kind of sucks, but being able to get rid of artifacts really matters, especially with like Corey Steelcutter and Ghost Vacuum and stuff being decent against us. And then does the other stuff that Destroy Evil does, and it's exile removal, which can matter. Cootseal's Flanker, you can play up to 3 of these, is a 3-mana 3/1 with flash. When this creature enters, choose one. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature for each creature that left the battlefield under your control this turn. You gain 2 life and scry 2, or exile target player's graveyard. We're rarely ever going to pick that first mode, so really gaining 2 life, scrying 2, and being a blocker against aggressive decks is solid. And then instant speed being a threat and exiling a graveyard against decks that care about the graveyards is very strong. Lauren of the Third Path is a 3-mana 2/1 vigilance. When Lauren enters, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment, and we can tap it to have you and target opponent each draw a card, which is a desperation play mostly, but this being a threat, a blocker, and something that can destroy artifacts and enchantments is pretty powerful. You can play an additional Day of Judgment. Day of Judgment, 4-mana sorcery, destroy all creatures. Just reset buttons are important. And board wipes and whatnot. I've already talked about Change the Equation. You can just play that in the sideboard, but we could also play Riverturn Monument. Riverturn Monument's a 2-mana artifact. You can pay 1 mana and tap it to have any number of target players each mill 2 cards. And its exhaust is 4 mana and tap it, any number of target players each mill cards equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. Very good in mirror matches and domain and in any other deck that is going super, 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 super long. We can just go on the mill plan if this sticks. You can play an additional Tishana's Tidebinder. Tishana's Tidebinder is a 3-mana 3/2 with flash. When this creature enters, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as this creature remains on the battlefield. This is a flash threat, which we love, and being able to counter these triggered abilities is really solid. I mean, what immediately pops in my head is like Corey Steelcutter, or in the mirror match, stopping the Shiko, or turning off Oculus, or whatever. Jace the Perfected Mind is competing for a spot with Riverturn Monument, but Jace is a 4-mana planeswalker where one of those mana is Phyrexian Blue. But it will enter with 2 less loyalty if you pay that Phyrexian Blue with life. Its +1 is till the end of your next turn. Up to 1 target creature gets -3, -0. -2 is target player mills 3 cards. Then if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, you draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you draw a card. And its -X is target player mills 3 times X cards. So it's a little bit easier to deal with than the Riverturn Monument because it's a planeswalker. However, it's a card that actually gives you card advantage rather than kind of going all in on the mill plan like Riverturn Monument does, which is pretty solid. Lithomantic Barrage, we can play 2 of, is a 1-mana sorcery. The spell can't be countered. Lithomantic Barrage deals 1 damage to target creature. A planeswalker deals 5 damage instead if that target is white and or blue. Very good against the Oculus decks, and basically any white or blue deck like Dimir or whatever. You play a Pyroclasm. Pyroclasm is a 2-mana sorcery. Deals 2 damage to each creature. Good against decks that are going wide. Don't that's it. It's also a really cheap interaction against Corey Steelcutter now that I think about it too. You play an Obstinate Bailoff. Obstinate Bailoff is a 4-mana 4/4. When this creature enters, you gain 4 life, but if a spell or an ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. So notice that we cannot cast this card. However, the way that the Esper Pixie decks beat us is with Hopeless Nightmare. And Hopeless Nightmare, they go turn 1 Hopeless Nightmare, and you can just put Obstinate Bailoff on the battlefield when you discard it, which is really, really solid. And also gaining 4 life kind of matters against that deck because they can be pretty aggressive against us. This is competing for spots with Wiltleaf Liege. Wiltleaf Liege is a 4-mana 4/4. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other white creatures you control get +1/+1, and then has the same ability as Obstinate Baloth. If a spell or an ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. So the difference between these is Obstinate Baloth is better if the Hopeless Nightmare thing is happening, but Wiltleaf Liege can capitalize on Hopeless Nightmare as well. However, you can cast it, even though you don't gain 4 life. You can play Zurgo and Ojutai. Zurgo and Ojutai is a 5-mana 4/4 with flying and haste. Zurgo and Ojutai has hexproof as long as they enter this turn. Whenever one or more dragons you control deal combat damage to a player or battle, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one into your hand, the rest of them bottom of your library in any order, and then you may return one of those dragons to its owner's hand. So this is a way to, in the late game against like other control decks or other decks that are going very long, for you to get card advantage so you can continue burying your opponent, apply pressure, and then sometimes really cute things happen with Shiko where you can return Shiko and be able to replay it and stuff. Or keep Zurgo and Ojutai hexproof, which is nice too. You can play up to 2 Ghost Vacuum. Ghost Vacuum is a 1-mana artifact. You can tap it to exile target card from a graveyard and pick a 6-mana. Tap it and sacrifice this artifact. Put each creature card exiled with this artifact onto the battlefield under your control with a flying counter on it. Each of them is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types. Activate only as a sorcery. This is great graveyard hate that doesn't get rid of your graveyard, so we can't play something like Rest in Peace because we're playing Shiko. But we can graveyard hate our opponent, apply pressure to their graveyard. And then in the deep late game, we can cash in the Ghost Vacuum to put a ton of creatures on the battlefield and get all those into the battlefield effects, which is super good as well. So again, you're picking 12 of these 27 cards for your sideboard, and you're picking 11 of these 24 cards for your main deck. And then you have your very own but stock version of Jeskai Control in Standard. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.